Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Carly. I'm a mixed media artist who specializes in gouache paint, ink work, and sometimes I do digital painting. But in this week's video, I'll be working with acrylics and painting on leather. I'll be using Angelus leather paint, which is just acrylic paint, but it's designed to adhere to leather. And I'm painting on a leather AirTag keychain. Because the color of the leather is black and I really want to have strong pigmentation while keeping the layers pretty minimal, I first do a base coat of white paint just to knock out any of that black background. That way, when I start my painting and I use all these reds and oranges and yellows, they actually show through. They actually are vibrant. Today I'll be painting a poppy flower, just a tiny little poppy flower. After I put down my base coat of white paint, I put down a base coat of an orangey red color. Now, I do love Angelus leather paints. I will say, however, if you just get the pack that comes with the primary colors and black and white, when you mix your colors together, they might end up being muddy. Like, for instance, if you use the primary red and blue to create purple, it's going to be a muddy purple. I really suggest getting their neon pigment collection. Not only do they have secondary colors, but all their colors are neon. So you can actually add that to your mixture. Even if you're not going for a neon color, those pigments really do help up the vibrancy of the pigments you're using. So right here, I actually used a neon orange acrylic paint from their neon collection mixed with their primary red to create that vibrant blood orange color. Once I have the base color of the petals for the poppy, as well as the center of the poppy, I added a little bit of yellow in the center there. I'm going to take that same blood orange mixture I have, and I'm going to focus that primarily on the edges of the poppy, as well as any areas where there's going to be deeper shadows that read more as an intense red, rather than a vibrant orange in the highlight regions.
Let's go.
Next, I go on to the next layer where I'm getting more of those mid-tones established. Because we're going from darkest to lightest, what I'm doing right now is getting that same blood orange mixture, but I'm adding more of that neon orange into it. And I'm applying that in areas where parts of the petals are going to be raised a bit. Right now, we're creating the general form of the poppy before we get into the details. I'm using a very small detailed brush to kind of wiggle the paint back and forth to create little tiny ripples in the petals. It just makes it look a little bit more organic. I'm also taking some of the Angelus acrylic black pigment and I'm applying that in the center where those little, what are they called? The little thingies in the center of a poppy, little black stems. I'm applying that in the center to kind of replicate that look. I'm also carving out the edges of the petals so that they're not perfect rounded shapes. They're going to have some ruffles and imperfections in the petals, as well as some folds in there. I'm also watering down the black pretty thin to create the really, really, really deep shadows that are going on. This looks crazy right now, but as I layer on more of those reds and oranges, this will look less like black splotches on the petal, and it'll read more as a cooler cast of just the local color of the petal. Similar to how I thinned out the black paint, I'm doing the same thing with both of my variations of red and blood orange, and I'm applying those colors in areas that I see according to my reference. I'm placing primary red in areas where there's more of that black shadow going on, and as you can see, this is already blending that black into the form of the flower, and it's looking less like ink splotches all over my painting and more like little dips and curves and shadows in the petals themselves. Then in areas where there's going to be more highlights, I'm getting more of that vibrant blood orange pigment, and I'm placing that in a line formation to really emphasize the ruffles within the petals, and I'm applying that on the highest points of highlights around the whole flower. Poppies tend to have this somewhat tissue paper appearance to their petals. They're very fragile and delicate. They look very papery, so that's why you're going to get a lot of these wrinkles and weird dents in their really thin petals, because they tend to kind of look crinkly, a lot like what I just said, tissue paper. So emphasizing the ruffles and the little imperfections in the petals is what's going to make this look more genuine and authentic. I'm really happy with the general form of the flower, and just to punch it up a bit, I'm going even further and still layering on those precise details. This is when you're going to likely use a smaller brush for more precise application of the paint. As I'm going higher up in value for the highlights, I'm applying more orange to my color mixture that I have. This contrast in tonal shifts in the colors is what's going to give the whole piece a lot more depth. As you can see, using the neon orange really helped to differentiate the different dips and valleys in the poppy flowers. And just to emphasize that even more, because I love contrast and I'm extra, I'm thinning out the primary yellow Angelus pigment with a lot of water, and I'm just going over certain areas that I want warmed up a bit. I'm also going back in and editing any of the shadows that need to be punched up a bit. Areas where I previously applied that thin coat of black paint for the shadows, I'm just going over again with some primary red to further emphasize the saturation. This piece is really close to being done, but what I'm doing here is just continuing that line work across the contours of the petals just to emphasize the texture. I really love texture in painting, not from paint buildup, but just with the illusion of where you place your pigments. I love creating the sense of texture and realism, like you feel like you can reach out and touch it. So I'm just going back in and through the paint layers, really one thin layer at a time, creating those lines to really emphasize the ruffles. Finally, I'm getting some of that neon orange pigment with some of the white pigment that I have, and I'm putting that on the ultra high points of highlights. You want to be as specific as possible with this. If you overdo it, it's going to flatten your whole painting. That's why I'm only applying it in areas where there's going to be direct light hitting it. If you're into makeup, think of it as the highlight on your cheekbones, right? You're not putting highlighter all over your face, okay? You're just putting it at the high points of highlight so that it catches the light. It gives the illusion that it's really dimensional. I'm applying that around the edges where some of the ruffles are folding in on the flower itself, as well as some areas where the ruffles are overlapping other petals. If you find that the white pigment kind of ashed out the painting and you want to punch up the saturation, you can always go back in with another super thin watered down layer of the orange neon pigment. I find that that really helped bring back some of the saturation. The white did its job by heightening the value in the painting, giving more contrast, but if you need to go back in with a thin layer of neon pigment to bring back that saturation, totally works. The good thing about acrylic is that, unlike gouache, which I typically use, it doesn't revive whatever's underneath. Once you put down a layer and it dries, it's there. Honestly, I could have left the painting as is, but I had to be extra, and I got the neon yellow pigment, put that in the center of the poppy flower, and I also applied it in some areas where there's going to be some high points of highlights. Off camera, I end up blending this out a little bit better. I'm not sure why I didn't capture that part, but here's what the end result looks like. Of course, go in with a top coat to seal it all in and match the finish of the painting to the finish of the leather. I hope you guys enjoyed this week's video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing. And I will see you next week. Bye!